and scared, so brave in front of Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad, because he knew that Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad is not his killer. And it came to such a stage that the people who were his enemies, Mukhtar's enemy, said that Mukhtar is claiming to be a prophet. Why? It's because he was given this information which was all coming true. He was saying that tomorrow an army will come and the army would arrive. Tomorrow this would happen and that would happen. And people said, and Mukhtar never made this claim. His enemies, Mukhtar's enemies, claim that Mukhtar is claiming to be a prophet because he's telling so much about the future. And this is the common view today held by our Sunni brothers. They do not regard Mukhtar as being a virtuous person. Amir Mukhtar, they say, claimed to be a Nabi, which he didn't. This is an allegation against Mukhtar. So even the companions of Mullah Ali, they have special merits, they have special information, they have special knowledge. They are blessed with this knowledge from the Ahlul Bayt. Now continuing with my topic, that this Khums, Fadak, Hiba, Virasat, inheritance, these were claimed by Sayyidah. She was claiming Allah's right. She was standing up for Allah. She was standing up for Rasulullah. She was standing up for herself. She was standing up for the poor. She was standing up for the destitute. She was standing up for the traveler, the wayfarer. She was claiming Allah's right. She was claiming the right of the orphans from the state. But the state deemed it necessary not to give anything to this family. And I mentioned yesterday, how did these people get away with it? How did the companions manage to take the property of Sayyidah, manage to do all these offences against the family of Ahlul Bayt, and Medina is silent? How did this happen? How could this happen? And I said to you yesterday, one was their excuse that we had paid allegiance, bayyat, to the first. So we are bound by that bayyat. And the second argument I gave is that they were scared of their own lives. They were scared of their own property being snatched away. If this could happen to the family of Ahlul Bayt, if this could happen to the family of Rasul, to the daughter of Rasul, then who are we to be protected? So that was one fear. Another problem was this. Islam had only been around at the time of Rasulullah's death. Long. Does anybody know? From the beginning of the first revelation, from the first announcement to Rasulullah's last breath, a period is calculated of how many years?
23.
23. It's 23 years. 13 years in Makkah and 10 years, just over 10 years in Medina Munawwarah. So you have a period of 23 years. That is less than one generation. Less than one generation. And people and psychologists and sociologists, they calculate one generation, 25 years. 25 years is an important landmark because it's a whole generation of people. It's enough, 25 years, to change a mindset. If you want to change the community of Bristol, 4, 5, 6, 10 years are not enough. You need a whole generation putting input into this ideology of change, bringing about a mental change, bringing about psychological change, bringing about changes of mindset. You need at least one generation, minimum, to create a change of mindset. But some of these Muslims had newly converted to Islam. Even those people who read the kalama in Makkah, all they were reading is Qulu la ilaha illallah tuflihu. This was what Rasulullah was saying. Say la ilaha illallah. And that is sufficient for you. It was only when Rasulullah came into Medina that Muhammad and Rasulullah was added. So not even one generation of the full kalama of la ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. Not even one generation. So how could you expect these people of Arabia, who had for generations, for centuries, been worshipping idols, have been practicing the live burial of their own children? And you know that ulama say that it was the children they buried. I have read tafsir which said they even buried their own sons out of fear of poverty. Out of fear of poverty, they buried their own children, their sons and their daughters. Daughters was more prominent, more prevailing, but sons was also buried. At least I've got one person who's listening to me, which I am, alhamdulillah, very honoured. So, at least I got one reply. It might be from the youngest member, but I'm sorry to see him go. I don't want anybody else to start speaking just in case you might play somewhere as well. So,
Muhammad wa ala Muhammad salawat.
So how did these people get away with this? And this is my own personal research on this subject, and I have come to this conclusion that the way they used, and what we're trying to point out here, is how did they get away by taking Sayyida's rights away? How did they get away taking Mullah Ali's right away? How did they get away with all this? And Medina is silent. Because some brothers do allege what happened to everybody. So are you trying to convince us, you Shias, that the companions had absolutely disregarded what Rasulullah had said? This is a big challenge to make. Shias make this challenge, saying that the companions had disobeyed Rasulullah's command. This is a big challenge to make. So how did they manage to do this? I said yesterday the two things. This is another thing. A generation had not passed for the mind to change of Arabia. They had been doing things only a few years back, burying their daughters alive. And the concept of the daughters having no value. Daughters having no value. But during the time of Rasulullah did something amazing that no other prophet in the history of mankind has done. What? I'll repeat this again. Rasulullah did something which no other prophet of mankind did. Which Rasulullah did and no other prophet did. And that was to show the status of a woman. And that was to get up for his own daughter. And no prophet in the history of mankind, I have certainly not read anywhere, maybe somebody else has, that Hazrat Nuh, Hazrat Ibrahim, Hazrat Musa, Hazrat Isa didn't have any children. Any of these ulul azm prophets got up for any of their children, and particularly a daughter. No prophet in the history of mankind ever got up for his daughter. Rasulullah did. He was trying to change the mindset. He was trying to change the concept of the status of a woman in society. And Sayyidah, by demanding her rights, she is a teacher. She is a vanguard of the whole of the women of mankind today. For she has shown that doesn't matter if men usurp your right, stand up for your right. Stand up for your right. Claim that which belongs to you. Claim that which belongs to you. And they talk about freedom of women in this country. For Sayyidah has shown what freedom is to the whole of mankind. She has shown what rights are. It doesn't matter whether the rights are given or not, but you should stand up. And this is a lesson to my sisters and to my mothers. In your own houses, if your rights are being usurped, speak up. I'm not trying to create a mini revolution in the homes, but this concept of the women being subdued by men, where does this come from? Forget Western civilization for a moment. If you go back to the very beginning of Islam, these people usurped the rights of women. They abused the women like no other civilization has. And inshallah, Karbala is an example of this abuse. Taking the captives of the family of Rasulullah is an example of this atrocity to women. This is the atrocity which befell the family of Rasulullah. So, what concept did they use? They used this concept that women in Jahiliyyah, in pre-Islam, did not inherit from their fathers. They did not inherit from their fathers. They did not inherit from their husbands. So, a man having a daughter, his daughter would not be amongst those people who inherit, despite having clear injunctions in the Quran. So basically, the state and the government use this very concept of saying, and everybody readily accepted it. Everybody readily accepted it, and Sayyidah spoke out against this, saying that, has there been a revelation upon you? She was asking the Khalifa, has there been a revelation about this to you? Claiming, you're changing the Sharia. You're changing the Sharia. On what basis? Do you have any revelation? And then Sayyidah also says that, am I not from the same religion as my father, that you are taking my rights away? And silence came from the other side, absolute silence. So they use this very concept that a daughter in the time of Jahiliyyah, in the time of pre-Islam, would not inherit her father's estate. Did you know even today that in Sunni fiqh, I've only learned this recently, that in Sunni fiqh, and Maulana mentioned the categories of inheritors. If you have a first category of inheritors, you do not turn to the second category. If you have the second category, you do not turn to the third category. But in Sunni fiqh, even today, if you have one daughter, this is amongst our Sunni brothers, if a Sunni brother has a daughter, and this estate of the fathers, it is inherited both by the daughter, partially, the wife, and also the uncles of that daughter, meaning the brothers. That is even today implemented in Sunni fiqh. But among Shias, if you have the first category, be it sons or daughters, you have no need to turn to the second category of inheritors. So they use this policy. And they succeeded. They succeeded. They managed to get away with this. And that was the third reason. They basically asked the people to go back to the time of Jahiliyyah. Forget what Islam has given, go back to Jahiliyyah. So with these actions of withholding the estate of Sayyidah, refusing her khums. Then the impact of lowering the status of the ahlul bayt. And as I mentioned over the past week, the policy of seclusion. Seclude this family from all public life. Seclude this family from all functions of society. And this is why we see Mawla Ali working in the orchards of the Jews, earning a livelihood. For had they given the right of Sayyidah at the very outset, maybe Mawla Ali could have done something for the whole of mankind. How can you expect the Muslims to flourish when the fountainhead of knowledge is working in a Jew's orchard? When the whole of the Muslim world should have turned to Mawla Ali and asked him for the information of how to run a state, how to run a government. And Mawla Ali, in his 4 years and 9 months of rule, gave us the best example of rule. Mawla Ali gave us the best example of what a state's function is, and what the function of the government is, and what the function of the governors, and what is the function of the police, what is the function of the judges, and what is the function of the financial income of the state. And all these things have come in the period of 4 years, 9 months, the reign of Mawla Ali. And yet this time was spent in warfare. We gained so much from the 4 years and 9 months of the rule of Mawla Ali, of what justice is in society, what justice is in a functioning Islamic government. In the 4 years and 9 months. And yet Mawla Ali spent time fighting Jamal, fighting Siffin, fighting Nehrawan. And not just fighting, when I was reading this, not just fighting, but begging people to join his army. People would refuse, saying it is too hot, or it's too cold, or we have to harvest. One excuse after another. Mawla Ali was asking the army to join him, but they said, we are busy doing this, we're busy doing that. And what happens? What happens? Mawla Ali and his chief arch enemy Muawiyah. And look at this parallel. The greatest enemy of Islam and of Rasulullah is Abu Sufyan in the time of Rasulullah. The greatest enemy of Mawla Ali in the time of Mawla Ali is his son Muawiyah. Rasulullah's enemy is Abu Sufyan. Mawla Ali's enemy is Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan. And the greatest enemy of Imam Hassan is Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan. And then the enemy of Imam Hussein al-Islam is Yazid ibn Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan. May Allah curse them all. So, there is on the one hand, you have this family, the family of Shaitan, who is the arch enemy of the Prophet's family. And now you have some understanding, I hope you have anyway. I've spent so many days trying to make this concept apparent to you all, the concept of Khums and the concept of lowering the status of the family of Ahlul Bayt. And I hope it's gone through to a certain degree, because I want to now conclude the whole of this chapter. I want to conclude tonight. The next chapter, you have the first three governments, the first, second and third. You have this three-state. This three-state had an official policy of suppression of information. Official policy of suppression of information. How can I prove this? If you read history and the subject of Tadween Hadith, the narration of Hadith, the compilation of Hadith, you will find this chapter. You don't have to read Shia books on this. Read any Shia, Sunni book on Hadith, and you will find this chapter in this book, any book. That during the time of the first 3 Khalifas, there was a suppression of information. And how was this done? This was done by banning and punishing anybody who narrated a hadith from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this was the official policy, that nobody should narrate any hadith. And the official policy on this, that only hadith which were related to wajibat, what was permissible and what was unlawful. Only these hadiths in particular could be narrated from Rasulullah. Anything else was out of bounds and dangerous. Why? Because if people had the opportunity, they would recite and narrate what Rasulullah said about the family of Ahlul Bayt. So you, on the one hand, you had suppression of information, and on the other hand, you have seclusion for the family of Ahlul Bayt. So these two things came together. Suppression of information, and then the lowering of the status and the honor of Ahlul Bayt. So these things came together. They crystallized. These two concepts crystallized and formulated the next stage in the atrocities which befell the family of Ahlul Bayt, the family of Rasulullah. And the next stage is taken over by Muawiyah. You had first the ignoring, the seclusion, the ostracizing of this family, and then the next stage was the second stage of this crystallization of this formula. What was that? Muawiyah started something, a campaign against the Ahlul Bayt, which the previous 3 didn't openly do. And what was that? And that was the campaign of cursing, like Maulana said yesterday. The cursing campaign against Mawla Ali and his family and the Hashmis. This was the second stage in this tragedy which was about to befall the family of Ahlul Bayt and the family of Rasulullah. So was this cursing done just in Sham, in Syria? Assalamu alaikum, Fayaz. Kasim. So this was done. Cursing. Was it just in Kufa? Was it just in Basra? Was it just in Yemen? This cursing campaign extended to the member of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Can anybody imagine? That the family of Ahlul Bayt live in Medina, and you have then Marwan on the seat of Khilafat, on the seat and the member of Rasulullah. And this cursing campaign was being heard in Medina, was being heard by the family of Ahlul Bayt. And they were sometimes sat amongst the audience, and they had to hear their names being cursed upon. Does it end there? Does it end at cursing? No. There's another stage to this. If it had been limited to this, maybe the picture of history would be different. But the stage gets even worse than this. Did you know that they did not regard Mawla Ali as a Muslim? The people who was cursing, the Khawarij, the Kharjis, they killed Mullah Ali because they said he's not a Muslim. And who is the greatest of Kharjis? Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan. The greatest of Kharjis. And this is no exaggeration. This is Marwan, the greatest of Kharjis. His father, the greatest of Kharjis. How come? So this campaign extended not to just cursing, it went to the second stage of even calling them non-Muslims. How could that be? People of Medina had seen Mawla Ali at Bayt Rizwan. They seen Mawla Ali at Badr, Khaybar, Khandaq. They had seen Mawla Ali at Khums. And all of a sudden, that these people who claimed to be Muslims, new converts to Islam, they are now on the mimbar of Rasulullah. These people which Rasulullah banned to come into Medina, Marwan and his father Hakam, and now they are on the mimbar of Rasulullah, cursing the family which gave them everything. And it pains our... Why do we do matam? We are crying for this very thing. Please recognize what history has told you. Please read history. People, they look at our matam, they look at our azadari and say, this is... And people who have gone mad. The mad people. But listen to our arguments. See what we have to say. If our arguments are logical, accept them. We don't force you to do matam. Matam is not something which the ulama has written in the Tawzi al-Masal that anybody who doesn't do matam is not a Shia. Don't do matam. It's up to you. But at least listen to our arguments. Listen to our... What do we have to say? What do we have to say? If it makes sense, accept it. If it don't, don't. So this family, Marwan, Abu Sufyan, Muawiyah, Yazid, they don't just stop at the cursing campaign. They now say that this family, Ahlul Bayt, are non-Muslims. Islam was given to them by the family of Rasulullah, and now they're claiming that they are not Muslims. And Maulana, yesterday, or the day before that, said that Umar bin Abdul Aziz stopped this campaign of cursing. He did. Umar bin Abdul Aziz stopped this campaign of cursing from the year when Imam Hassan, not even there, before that, when Usman was killed, the campaign started then, that we want the revenge of the blood of Usman. And they claim that Mawla Ali in his army had those people who killed Usman. So this campaign started at about 30 Hijri, 35 Hijri. So when this campaign started from 35 Hijri up until 99 Hijri. 99 Hijri. Over 2 generations of people came and cursed the family of Ahlul Bayt. Even in Medina, they were being cursed. You would have thought at least Medina would have been spared. But Medina wasn't spared either. They had their ulama. They had their ulama su. Their evil alims doing this. And